Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the very basics of taxonomy and classification of living organisms. We're going to do just the very basics of the purpose, what it is, and the generic setup of the system that we use to classify different organisms. Because this whole world is filled with all different kinds of living organisms, all different really cool ones, and we keep finding more of them, especially the more we keep discovering at the bottom of the ocean. We've even recently discovered potential life on Venus in the atmosphere. Every time we find life, we have to kind of classify and organize it a little bit. And here's the real basic system of how we do it. So before I even talk about that, though, I like to start with a little bit of an analogy of why we do it and how we set it up. I really like to use analogies if I can. So let's start with something really basic. Let's say if we were going to organize all the people here at Kaufman, and let's just keep really broad categories here. All right. Let's say we have let's start with everyone, right? So we have the people at Kaufman. All right, that's a lot of people. All right, we're talking almost 2,500 people throughout the entire day. All right, lots of people, including teachers, staff, administration, all that stuff like that. All right, so it's a lot of people. All right, let's just break it down into two different categories here. We'll just keep it nice and simple. We'll just do two. We'll say there's teachers and there's students. All right. Still really, really broad categories. There's different kinds of teachers. There's different kinds of students. But all of them fit into that. One thing that teachers and students, although different, have in common is that they are people at Dublin City Schools. All right. Again, let's just break it down. Let's just keep going with the students here. Let's break the students down into, out of all the students, there are some that are boys, and there are some that are girls. Let's just keep it real simple like that, all right? That there are ones that are genetically boys and genetically girls, all right? So now we have a little bit more specific here, all right? If we have a new student come in, we can further categorize a little bit more, all right? So we can break that even more. Let's just keep going here. Among these, I could break this one down into 4 different ones. All right, there are freshmen, there are sophomores, there are juniors, there are seniors. All right, so if I have 2 students, one fits in this category here and one here, they might be different based on whether it's a freshman and one's a junior, but they might both be girls who are students at Kaufman. All right, teacher, the only thing that teachers and a sophomore student might have in common is the fact that they're people, all right, at Kaufman. We could break this down even more. So let's say out of the sophomores, which is typically biology, you could have, as a biology teacher, you could have me, or you could have Miss Dute, or you could have Mr. De Palma. All right, so if I was going to compare 2 biology students, let's say, one that has Ms. Duke and one that has Mr. Richardson, all right? They have although they are different science or different biology teacher, they might have a lot in common because they are both sophomores, all right? Potentially, let's just keep this easy. They're both sophomores, both girls, they're both students, they're both people at Kaufman, all right? Boy at Kaufman, they're going to have things that are in common as well. They're both students and they're both people at Kaufman, all right? The new student comes, we would have to fit them in somewhere. All right, we need to fit them in here, and let's say they're, a sophomore. You're a female, and we put you in a biology class, and we're going to put you in the diplomas. All right, that makes you put them in this certain category here. And so we have different levels here, right? Levels of organization. I did 5 levels, but I could do even more. I could do even more levels. All right. We have a lot of life on this planet here, and we have to break it down into different things, all right? Break them down into different categories. We start with kind of the bigger one here, which kind of includes everything, and then we get still kind of very broad categories. Teacher and student, as you can see, means a lot of different things, all right? But teacher and student, we're getting a little bit more broad, or a little bit more specific, a little bit more specific, more specific. Each level, we're getting more and more specific about that student. All right, so one that falls under this I could even do this even further here. All right, someone's in my third period class versus someone who's in my fifth period class. The student that falls in this category, I can say a lot about them. Right? Anyone that's in this category right here is in Mr. Richardson's physical science class, fifth period. They are a sophomore. They are a girl, a student at Kaufman. All right. So we could be a lot more specific as we go down. All right. Now in life, we break this down. When we talk about biology and different forms of life, we can break this down. I'm not going to go through all of it right now. We will spend more time on it. We could have light, obviously, all things, life, super broad. We break that down into three broad categories called domains. We're going to spend another video talking about each one of those domains. All right, so we have something very simple that, just like teacher versus student, something very simple that separates the group. Life is everything. All living things. We have a very broad way to break them down. And then with each one of these, we can break those into different kingdoms. All right, this domain here, which we'll spend a lot of time talking about, has four different kingdoms. All right, and then each one of these can be broken down into a smaller group, which we call phylums, which we're all going to talk about these in a moment. And you keep going, right? These phylums can be broken down into something else, right? And we get more and more specific as we go down in these levels, all right? And that's what we're going to talk about today, is that system that we have. I drew 6 levels here. Each level getting more and more specific. In the current system that we use, there are 7 major levels that we use to distinguish between different organisms. So whenever we create a new organism, whenever we find a new organism, we see where it fits in that pattern there. So this whole study of this here, starting over here, all right? The whole practice of this and this whole system is what we call taxonomy. All right, taxonomy. Taxonomy, let me get you a little bit closer. All right, taxonomy is this idea about how we organize life. All right, it's the system we use to do that. All right, taxonomy is we just organize life. Organization by, and what we do it by is we do it by both. We started with mostly just physical characteristics, what they look like, but now in this age of genetics and DNA and really an understanding in the last half century or so, we can do it by genetic markers as well. There are some organisms that don't look anything alike, but are very genetically close together. All right? So by physical and genetic similarities, or genetic traits. Right? Our understanding of genetics has really helped with that here. All right, so I'm just going to go through real quick what that process is. We're going to spend some time on it. All right, so we could say start with all life, right? Start with life. This is that broad category, right? That's our first level there. All right. Then we're going to go down to domains. That life is broken into broad categories called domains. Those domains are broken down into more specific ones each one of them called kingdoms. All right. Then we can take those more specific ones and we can turn those, we call those kingdoms into phylums. Class, orders, all right, families, all right, and then we kind of get down to these last 2 ones here, all right. We're getting more and more specific. We're breaking down these different levels here. We get to genus, and species. All right, genus and species. All right, so as we go down the list, we're getting more specific. All right, more specific. more detailed, right? Broad, you can obviously start life is a very broad topic, and then we get to ones very, very specific, and there's different criteria that split kind of that pattern like we did when we talked about the different families. All right, now this last one right here is very important, all right? Because if we're going to compare two organisms, we might as well do it at the most specific level, all right? I mean, we fit in the same category as fish in this one here, all right? We're not that similar to a fish, all right? There's a lot of things very different from us, all right? And so what we do is we kind of go all the way down to this very bottom layer, all right? And we use this bottom one here to identify using our naming system, which we call binomial nomenclature. Bi meaning two. Bi meaning two. Nomial meaning naming. Nomenclature means naming system. So two-name naming system. All right? And so whenever we do that, you guys are very familiar, you're probably familiar with the human one. All right? Homo sapien. That is the genus and species, Homo sapien. Canis lupus. That's dogs or wolves. All right? And then there's even subspecies. Technically, we're Homo sapien, which is the subspecies of it. All right? But this is the level that we start to compare different organisms at. All right, using our binomial nomenclature. It's just these last two layers. They're the most specific ones, and so we use that to kind of name organisms. We always use the Latin names, so they always have very interesting names. And we always do it in Latin. The first name, genus, is always capitalized. Species is always lowercase. All right, and this is the system that taxonomy we basically use today. All right, we have different layers here. We get more and more specific domains. There's 3 of them. We're spend a lot of time on these ones here in a separate video. All right, and then obviously genus, species is a little bit more specific because that's one we use for our naming system when we name different organisms. Okay, that's it. All right. So some things to think about is about at what level are different organisms the same? At what point do they branch off? Which one's more specific, an order or a phylum? Right? Which one's more specific, a kingdom or a family? What is the binomial nomenclature? What we call taxons? That's what each one of these called, or 2 layers or levels do we use to do that? It's genus and species. Things to think about. All right. Otherwise, that's pretty good for the basics of taxonomy. If you didn't get that, you can go back and watch it again. Otherwise, thank you very much. Good luck. And as always, may the science be with you. Bye.